Now, the International 16 Days of Activism campaign calls for action and unity to raise awareness about gender-based violence, especially towards women and children. It also highlights the negative impact violence has on victims and society in general. Even though attention has been given, discrimination and gender-based violence against women and children with disabilities still remains an area in which we need to shine the spotlight on. Tomorrow marks World Disability Day, and given that South Africa has a high prevalence of gender-based violence, especially intimate partner violence, there's a need to highlight the violence experiences of women and children with disabilities within their communities. To unpack what the Department of Social Development has in place to aid gender-based violence victims living with disabilities is Mmanoa Tshenye, the social worker policy manager at the Department of Social Development. I don't know if I said your name correctly.
Yeah, you did. It's Mmanoa Tshenye. From the National Department of Social Development.
Thanks for making the time to talk to us. Now, can you perhaps tell us about the statistics with regards to gender-based violence towards people and children living with disabilities?
Okay. I would first like to correct that we don't refer to them as people living with disabilities. We refer to them as persons or people with disabilities. Presently, we don't have statistics on women and children with disabilities who are experiencing gender-based violence, but there are cases where women and girls with disabilities do experience gender-based violence by community members, by family members who take advantage of the disabilities that they have.
Thank you so much for that correction. In fact, I was looking at here that tomorrow we're marking International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and I was wondering why there are those discrepancies. Now, the cases that do exist, are they being reported?
Yes, there are those that are reported that the department, both at national and provincial level, are aware of. Some are not reported for various reasons, because people might feel that even if I report, nobody will take me seriously, especially those with intellectual disabilities. I will give an example where a woman who is intellectually disabled was raped several times and fell pregnant as a result. But, reporting the case to the police, taking it to court was an issue, because it's like she can't even remember things clearly. Or today she will say this, tomorrow she will say something, and then it's just struck off the roll because there's no proper information given by the victim herself.
So ideally, how should the law, the community, and people who can assist be responding to this particular case study and cases like it?
Okay. I think it starts with us, being educated on what disability is. Remember, we have different types of disabilities, and because of whatever type of disability that one has, they experience different situations in different ways. I'll give an example of a deaf person. If a woman is deaf and she's subjected to violence, it's not easy for her to communicate with us as a community because we don't even know sign language. It's not easy for her to express her feelings, for those who are supposed to give her service to understand what really happened. And it's been realized that as a result of that, perpetrators take advantage of the situation. But as a department, we have a gender-based violence command center, which operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there's a Skype that women who are deaf can send messages to say, help me GBV, or as an SMS that they can use, to send a message that I need help. And then the command center, because it's meant by qualified social workers, they'll be in a position to know what to do in responding to whatever situation that she'll be experiencing at that point in time.
So you have now put in place the command center, which is very necessary. And then as you set it up, you find out that there's more need. There's more nuances and more challenges. Just take us through this process. As you said yourself, that different disabilities need to be responded to with different interventions. What are some of the challenges that you are experiencing as you try to make this command center relevant and improve its effectiveness?
Okay. Whenever a case is reported to the Gender-Based Violence Command Center, they will either refer the victim to a social worker in the area where they live, or to the police if it's a case that needs to be responded to by the police with immediate effect, or to a shelter where somebody needs to be removed from the place where they are and be put into a shelter where they can get the necessary assistance and linkages with other stakeholders that can help her. But if I may give an example, some of our shelters are not accessible for women who are on wheelchairs. So as a result, there'll be a shelter nearby, but it will be difficult to accommodate somebody on a wheelchair because it's not accessible structurally. On the other hand, those who are taking care of women who have experienced violence and have been referred to the shelter might not necessarily understand the needs of a woman with a disability or a child with a disability, or how to respond to those needs. So it's a matter of us educating each other on what disability is and how to manage disability and how to ensure that as different stakeholders, we accommodate them in the different services that we render.
Yeah. So take us through, as the country starts or continues to hold gender-based violence conversations, what conversations are being held in the persons living with disability space in terms of how communities should be responding to gender-based violence in this particular instance, and how men are urged to treat women living or women living with disabilities?
Okay, I can give a recent example of what happened, where our Deputy Minister, Henrietta Bogopane Zulu, had a dialogue with persons of short stature. And gender-based violence was one of the topics that was discussed there. And they discussed so many things indicating as to how they would like us to respond to them as persons of short stature when they experience gender-based violence.
Excuse me, Mmanoa.
They might be laughed at because of their height. Okay.
Oh, I wanted you to explain what short stature is, and you just did.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you.
Yeah. So they gave examples of what they would like to see us doing as service providers to ensure that their human right, their right to access of services is also realized. Because if, for example, when they get to a place, then we laugh at them because how can you have a boyfriend with your height? You know, all those things that we have, the prejudices, the nasty comments, the discrimination that we have against persons with disabilities. So as long as a community, we are not aware of those needs and how to respond to them, we'll continue to have challenges. And it's something that cannot only be done by government on its own, but it has to involve everybody. each and every stakeholder, be it at local municipality, at provincial level, whether it's the Department of Health or SABC or Justice, we have to work together as one in order to ensure that the rights of persons with disabilities are realized.
As a person who works in this space, do you feel like enough has been done? If not, what more needs to be done?
If I need to be honest with you, it's not enough is being done to address issues of persons with disabilities. There's a need, even within government, there's still a need for us as policy makers, as policy implementers, to understand what disability is and how to respond to the needs of persons with disabilities. So most of the time, the attitude that we show to persons with disabilities leads to them, being scared to come forth and say, I'm experiencing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because to start with, it will be, how does somebody who's on a wheelchair have a relationship? Such things. How can one do this to somebody who's like you? And you're like, what does it mean, who's like me? Because whether one has a disability or does not have a disability, we are all human beings and we all need to be treated equally and to be taken seriously wherever we go for help.
It sounds like we could talk the whole day because there is just so many layers and so much to go through. But just in terms of the International Day of Persons Living with Disabilities, what is the department doing? What activations are you holding tomorrow?
Remember that the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities is the lead department in disability issues. So from our side, there's going to be a dialogue with parents of children with disabilities. It will be led by our Deputy Minister, Mrs. Henrietta Bogopane Zulu. And there's also going to be another dialogue. They are both virtual, where persons with intellectual disabilities who are in protective workshops will also have a say of what is happening presently in our communities, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. How does that affect their lives? And the decisions that are being taken, for example, when protective workshops are closed, how does that affect them as individuals and their families? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, a lot to go through, but not sufficient time. But thank you so much for making the time to speak to us, Mmanoa Tshenye from the Department of Social Development. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Desiree.
Just in case, in the point of looking at how people or persons living with disabilities are affected by gender-based violence.